So this is the last $20 of our money. It's right now.
Yeah. It's on your head.
Yeah.
Too bad we didn't get to put the last $20 in your face.
Are we ready to do this?
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
Hey, look at that. That's us. That's us. This is us doing our thing. What is it? Film Dorks podcast number 4? Or
Number
who
4.
knows?
New. It's number 4 if you started listening to the audio podcast. It's kind of number 2 on the video podcast. So,
and it's kind of number 207 on the all-time podcasts for us.
Yeah,
as we have. We have
the big boss man.
I'm Nick, and
I'm Tom.
And then we got our old buddy.
I'm Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff Heller.
Jeff.
That's Jeff. That's the dude right there. He's the dude. He's the dude.
I used to host the previous incarnation of this podcast. Many
you did actually. Yep.
With you and our good friend Kevin.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Makes me laugh.
Yeah.
That kid makes me laugh. But yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah.
Shaking the old podcasting cobwebs off.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, we knew that this topic that we're going to be talking about today is near and dear to your heart.
It is indeed.
And for all you people stuck at home, I can imagine, it feels like time is proceeding at a crawling pace.
Yeah, fucking slowly.
So we figured, why not do a discussion about time travel movies?
Yeah, let's get into it. Time travel, man. Time travel movies.
Yeah. I've got a couple stats if you guys are interested in hearing them.
Yeah, so if we're gonna talk about, we're gonna get into a couple specific movies today, but this is gonna be a little serious. We're gonna play around with this idea for a few podcasts to come. What stats you got? Yeah, there's a lot. There's a ton of time travel movies and time travel subgenres in cinema.
Which it was a good point you made earlier before we started recording. There are subgenres, which is interesting. Like you said, comedy and
like time travel comedies, or time travel even. You could probably say buddy comedies, and then there's also like the indie low budget time travel movies, and those there's actually a couple really good ones in that. And then there's
like action time travel, crime time travel, which might be
time loops. Another one
as well. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go over the top
metaphysical type time shit that's not quite time travel, but still deals with time in a metaphysical sense. There's all sorts of weird shit going on with time in cinema.
Yeah. So the top rated time travel films of all time, we'll go 10 to 1.
Okay.
Safety Not Guaranteed, Run Lola Run. Now, Run Lola Run, do either of you remember how that was significant in our film school days?
Yeah, I do remember that being
it was an indie hit.
It was. There was a poster for it hanging in one of the rooms a lot of classes were in. I just remember seeing that poster every day.
Right on.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it being.
What I remember is for
indie darling. Safe. Yeah. Run Lola Run's in the top 10, really.
Yeah. Groundhog Day, which is a time loop film, technically. Planet of the Apes, Donnie Darko, Time After Time, Terminator 2, Terminator 1, Back to the Future, and the film we'll be discussing today is the 1960 George Pal film, The Time Machine.
Okay, so there's been those are just the top 10. And I might argue a few of those, to be honest with you, but regardless, even when you look at the top 10 list, there's like movies that fit into their own little subgenre. Because Run Lola Run would be also, I would say, indie.
Yeah.
A little higher budget than maybe something like, which maybe we'll get into in the future, something like Primer or like Time Crimes. Right. Or which are both really, really low budget, but
and also
great film.
Probably two of the smartest time travel films.
Yeah, they are actually. And then there's those big budget, huge movies. The Terminators and the Back to the Futures and the fucking Source Code. That kind of stuff, like big budget, blockbuster time travel movies.
The original Terminator comparatively was pretty small budget.
That's true.
It's only the second movie that James Cameron was ever at the helm of. So,
but definitely not even as small of a budget as something like Time Crimes or Prime.
Oh no.
So, but yeah, and then there's the comedies and like Bill and Ted's and Hot Tub Time Machine
Mhm.
and the forgettable Hot Tub Time Machine 2. But so
Back to
there's
the
that.
Future's kind of a comedy. I
Yeah,
mean,
those are they're
uh,
they're, they're
Yeah.
sort of
It wasn't
comedies.
when Eric Stoltz was starring in it. At least he didn't think it was.
yeah. Well,
He took it a little more
how'd that work
seriously.
out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
It didn't work out. There's a couple existing photos left, and that's about it. Just
There's one
There's
shot.
there's
one over the
barely any
shoulder
proof.
shot of him, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
when Marty lays out Biff in the cafe, in the cafe, Lou's Cafe in 1955. It's Eric Stoltz's shoulder, and
Yeah.
one shot.
interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if he gets.
So
I wonder if he gets
Residuals.
residuals for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
right, he probably does. I guarantee he gets residuals for that. Actually,
Like 2 cents, and then he's like, ah.
Yeah, it's just a constant reminder that he was fired from one of the most popular
right.
films of all time.
65 cent fucking residual checks. Anyhow, so there's that. Those stats. Are there other stats that we should share before we get into talking about
Yeah,
some
there's
time
some.
travel
As
movies?
far as you were discussing, there's some indie ones and there's some blockbusters. And these are the most profitable time travel films of all time.
Okay.
Going again from 10 to 1. Number 10 is 12 Monkeys, which
Mm.
actually surprises me. Uh, the
Yeah,
rest are
because Terry Gilliam
right.
directed it. Nothing
Right.
he makes is profitable. That's not a diss on Terry Gilliam.
No.
It's just a diss on his box office
Yeah.
revenue. He's a
Uh,
brilliant fucking filmmaker, but too many people just don't get him.
which makes that's probably his most commercial film. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
his most,
Arguably, yeah.
most
That
notable.
well, grim, but let's keep going on your list.
Meet the Robinsons at number 9. Looper, which is a great time travel film.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Men in Black 3. X-Men: Days of Future Past. No, we're getting higher in front. Now, this to give you an idea of the box office. That was $741 million box office
For what?
X-Men: Days of Future
X-Men.
Past. Yeah.
Oh, that
Austin
is a time
Powers.
travel. Ah,
Yeah. I
there's
mean,
another comedy.
right. And there's two. They count both Spy Who Shagged Me and Goldmember.
Ah.
Okay.
Star Trek. They count their whole Star Trek franchise in here, which I think is kind of a cheat.
Yeah, that's a cheat.
But there's 3 time travel films. There's Generations, First Contact, and Voyage Home are all time travel films.
Right.
Terminator franchise at $1.6 billion, and number 1 is Back to the Future franchise at $1.9 billion.
Huh.
Back to the Future 3 made a surprising a lot of money, more than I thought. Is $444 million. That
Weird.
probably includes Blu-ray and DVDs and stuff, but still,
Well, that was the first time that I think a big sequel like that was shot back to back with
Right.
2, and they were released very shortly apart too. So I think
Yes.
the hype machine was about as big as it could be.
Could
You're
be,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, they released Back to the Future 2 was November 22nd of '89, and then 3 was March, I think 15th of '90.
Yeah.
And Back to the Future came out 2 came out on video like a couple days before 3 came out in theater, so it was really
There you
well
go.
done.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure that was all calculated.
Right.
Highly calculated and highly successful. That franchise made a ton of money and still has a massive effect on, like, people still,
Yeah.
you'll still watch that movie and enjoy it. It's one of
Yep.
those,
Yeah, they totally
they
held up.
well made pieces of cinema, for whatever
we
it
have-
is.
With our previous incarnation of Screen Radar, Film Dumpster, we've interviewed a few of the cast members. And Tom, you worked with one, yes?
Yeah, Leah Thompson was on a film that I mixed years ago called The Spectacular Now, which was the first time that I worked with Miles Teller as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we've interviewed Crispin Glover and Claudia Wells, who played Jennifer, Jeffrey Wiseman, who played George in Back to the Future 2 and 3,
2 and 3, all right.
and what's his name? Princess Strickland.
Christopher Lloyd. Oh,
No,
I
blanking on his
forget
name
that
now.
actor's name. Yeah, that's all right.
So, yeah,
We're not talking
we've
about
had
that
some
We're talking about
We're not,
peripheral
no, that'll-
interviews.
We'll save those for our Back to the Future discussion. We're discussing the Time Machine.
Yeah, the original, the first real big time travel movie
Right.
was the 1960s, The Time Machine,
Based on H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
Yeah.
which was 1897. That novel came out.
1895, somewhere on there, yeah.
Yeah, late
But,
1890s. So
he wrote another time travel story that was the foundation for that when he was in college, though. That was actually
Really?
in like 1888 or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay, so it was kind of that was like his college short story that he's like, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm going to rewrite this now that I know how to write a little better.
Yeah.
And get it.
We got commissioned to do a novel.
Yeah. But regardless, this came out in 1960. You know, we recently did a podcast talking about The Invisible Man and kind of went into we delved not too deeply into the invisible rabbit hole, so to speak, but and that one was 1933 that came out, and I feel like this 1961, as far as like effects go, it's just
It's a step
other
down.
than
Yeah.
it's a big step
Yeah.
down. Other than the time lapse photography, which was really
Right.
cool.
They actually won
Um,
an Oscar.
I
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
So the movie won an Oscar for that. Which makes me wonder, like, was there nothing else going on in 1960 for a special effects Oscar? Because
I
I'm
mean, I
telling
may
you,
be wrong, but
this one really devolves into a forgettable Star Trek
it's exactly
episode
a Star Trek episode.
or
I can't.
Doctor Who.
Or
I would say this.
Lost in Space even.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
It was
just
it was definitely a product of its times, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, it totally is a product of its time. It does, but it doesn't hold up like something like 1933's The Invisible Man, which is a phenomenal movie. Just the like Claude Rains is incredible in it, and the special effects are like you're kind of watching it going, how the hell did they know how to do this shit in
Right. Yeah.
1933? You know?
I will say this. I think the first half or the first act of The Time Machine holds up really, really well. I
Yeah,
love
actually, it is much. It's the first act is its strongest part.
Yeah, that's what I said to you too before we started rolling. Is like until they get to the 60s.
Right. It's not
Um,
bad.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean,
it's relatively. I mean, they do a nice job of, especially given the time frame when they made it, they did a nice job of kind of keeping the tone and the context of the book.
the book. That's what it
Right.
felt like. It felt like they were really flowing with the book, which isn't great, but it's actually much stronger than the rest of the film, and
Right.
it does have kind of an interesting effect. But it does feel like you're watching a little bit of a book, and when it feels like you stop watching the book, you're like, okay, I was kind of a little bored with the book, but I'd like to go back to the book now. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And they made some notable changes. I mean, the Eloi were not. They didn't speak English in the book. They just were
Yeah,
creatures,
that-
like small, timid, tiny little creatures. And the Morlocks were kind of the same, but they just looked like garbage in the film.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
looked there.
Mhm. They look like fucking. They look like if you were in a Tarantino movie and there was like a bad guy on a cereal box. That's what these creatures look like. They were designed for.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just dumb
so-
looking.
For people that aren't familiar with the story, should we briefly go over that? Do you
Sure.
think?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So George is the main character, and there's like a little Easter egg. If you look at the time machine in the movie, there's a little plaque that says H. George Wells. So he's
Oh.
in the movie. He's
Right.
technically supposed to be H.G. Wells,
H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
but I think that's just an Easter egg. But either way,
I noticed that though too,
he's
and
an
I just
inventor.
assumed that's
and he invents the time machine. And for no particular reason, it seems in this one, he doesn't seem to have any more motivation other than like scientific
he's
glory.
right. He's gonna go travel in time.
Yeah, and well, he says like, I don't think I was born at the right time or something. Like, I want
Right, but and it's funny in the film the way he's like going through it and like the performance. It's almost like he's like shooting dope. Like he's like, oh yeah, I'm getting a little further in time. Oh,
Yeah.
it's like
So-
he gets mildly erotic as he travels through time.
So his time travel machine is a Victorian era, like it looks almost like a sled with a whole bunch of gack attached to it. And this
So,
big,
you know
like,
what?
this big
He did
metal
such a nice
umbrella
job.
in the back.
They did. I think it's gorgeous looking stuff.
No, it's nice looking, yeah, absolutely. But it's
Yeah, it works.
there's not a lot of scientific principle really thrown
No,
into it. It
no.
doesn't seem-
No, it's definitely got that Disney sort of charm to it, like
Right,
Chitty
yeah.
Chitty Bang Bang. You know, like that car
Right.
was a piece of shit, but you know, like yeah, it's got some kind of sort of odd,
what you
kind
call
of
it.
schleppy charisma to it. You know, like a bad '80s movie.
Right. So anyway, he hops in there and he goes and checks out. Well, he goes like what 10 years in the future and just sort of sees what's going on, and then he like decides to push it a little more.
Right.
Ends
Yeah.
up in the no, he ends up in 1917 where he runs into Philby's son
Right.
and finds out that his friend Philby has died in World War
Right.
One.
We're one. Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's the
Alan
end of
Young
it.
playing Philby. Alan Young, by the way, was the voice of Scrooge McDuck.
That makes
That's
sense.
right. Yeah, I did read that somewhere, which is interesting. Okay. Good old Scrooge McDuck. But yeah.
And he also
So
had a cameo in which we can discuss in a little bit. He had a cameo in the remake. And,
right. But he basically just kind of keeps popping through time until he ends up
And
deep into the future.
at first they show it with these time lapse sequences of like the dresses across the street changing fashions. That was kind of neat.
right. It was a nice effect.
Yeah.
It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice
Um,
technology.
A lot of voiceover during that whole the whole first act. Like
Yeah.
there's a ton of voiceover and him traveling through parts and making commentary, and so that's why it felt a lot more like the book.
Right.
And as he traveled through time and kept jumping and making
But then he
until
lands
he
in
until he
1966,
yeah,
Right.
which is 6
right.
years after the movie's made, and it's like this weird future world. All of a sudden, it looks like the cover of Popular Science magazine.
It would have been more effective if he landed in 61. So at least they could have had some. They at least could have made a commentary on society at the time. But they decided they went really futuristic for something that wasn't that far in the future.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
super weird.
Well, Terminator 2 made the same mistake. I mean,
Yeah, it did a similar
Right.
thing. Yeah.
but anyway, so all the people are there's a air raid siren going off because apparently Russia's about to nuke everybody, and everybody's like sort of mindlessly going into the fallout shelters, and then the bomb goes off, and he's like outside, and a nuke
Right.
goes off like pretty close, and he's apparently
And he's
fine.
good. Yeah, he's good.
He just
He's
hops
totally
in the
good.
time machine and pieces
Takes
out.
off. Like yeah, he obviously outran the nuke, even
Right.
though it did land. But he got
Yeah, I
in the
mean they
time
show a
machine.
full on mushroom cloud, and like
I know it was pretty silly. And then he totally junks out and heads out to the future.
Indiana Jones survived the mushroom cloud too. So
That's true. In a
he
refrigerator.
could have a fridge though. I mean,
Yeah, there was some logic
doesn't
behind
even
it.
compare.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and then he's in deep into the future, and shit's just weird, and
he's in
it's
rock
like,
at one point, which was actually kind of. I thought.
Well,
It was
yeah,
yeah,
he
that
gets
was kind of
encased in
cool.
stone.
Yeah, he gets encased in stone, and he has to wait for the stone to dissipate, and that was actually kind of an interesting little bit.
Which
But then he
takes
and
him to the year 80,000 something, which I thought was pretty.
80,000.
The year 2000.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm just. It was, and this is where the movie just totally loses all.
well, here's the first thing that got me like weirded out is like he's a inventor in 1899 and he builds this machine and it has this odometer on it that shows him like what year it is, and his odometer goes up to 80,000. I mean, presumably way past that, but he had to have built in a mechanical counter of some kind that went all the way up to that number. Otherwise,
Right.
it wouldn't have been able to show that. And it was just kind of funny to me that like he has that
and
forethought
foresight,
that I might go into the 5
million.
digit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into 5 millions.
Um, but yeah, so he lands in 80,000 something, and he's finally sees the sky and slows down his little lever to like normal time.
Yeah, the peace out and 80,000.
And he happens on a hippie commune.
Here's where. Okay. Again, we've already. This is where it kind of jumps the shark a little bit.
Right.
But it also the H.G. Wells was friends, if not acquaintance, with Darwin, and he was a strong supporter of Darwin's theories of evolution, and that's with the premise of him going that far in the future and seeing how the Eloi and
Morlock.
the Morlocks have diverged on the evolutionary scale. It was to support Darwin's theory of evolution.
Sure.
This does not really address that because they're just like normal people. The look
Right.
at it's
Yeah,
like, hey,
No, I
how's
was
it going?
picking up
They're like
much more of
Swedish
a.
models.
yeah, like they're still from the '60s.
Right. Yeah.
They're like ready to go to the sock hop, and they don't know any better.
Right.
You know,
I was picking up more of a like subverting the counterculture kind of a theme with this whole
Yep.
plot line.
yeah,
It's
the
the
yeah.
see what can
I'm
happen if you turn into hippies.
Right.
You know.
That's true. Yeah. You'll be eaten.
Well, yeah, hippies weren't quite a thing, but
But there
counterculture
was
was definitely
counterculture, sure.
growing at
Yeah.
that time. You know,
Yeah.
but yeah, there was definitely some of that going on with it, but it was just, and the Morlocks were just fucking goofy looking, and
They were
like
terrible.
just looked like just a really bad Star Trek fucking
The
fight
sets didn't
sequences and
really
shit.
have too
Yeah, they're
much going on either.
uh,
No.
Like when he gets underground into the Morlock layer, it it was pretty clearly a stage with a whole bunch of paper mache rock stuff going on and some like
hmm
steam things and those weird like pipes for no reason.
and some of those destruction sequences in some of the time travel stuff with like the lava, it looks
Yeah,
so bad.
it was like mud with like an orange light shining on it. I
Yeah,
think.
it was really stupid. Yeah, it's just so, yeah, and at this point it's kind of like you don't really care, and its message is kind of
Oh, that's right.
corny.
That was enough. In the '60s, when the nukes go off, the nukes set off volcanoes. So it wasn't just
hmm
nukes; it was
That's
nukes
what I
and
was talking
volcanoes.
about. And then the those sequences of the lava coming down, and it was
Yeah,
like so bad. It looked like a kid, like it looked like some kids in high school, like,
Right. Like
you know,
Age of
made a,
Land of the Lost, the original Land of the Lost
yeah,
TV
totally.
series. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so in the end, this one, it's a fairly disappointing movie. I mean, now I know a lot of people love it, and you got to give it credit for dealing with a topic that hadn't really been something that dealt with in cinema, and having to express that visually,
Right.
uh but yeah, man, it's not it's
Now
not a very good
he
movie.
George Pal, two things. He had planned on writing, making a sequel to it.
hmm
And they kind of did. They ended up making it into a special. In 1993, there was a special on PBS called Time Machine: Their Journey Back. It was like a time travel thing. Michael J. Fox was in it, but they
right.
actually brought Rod Taylor and Alan Young back and reprised their roles and did like a little mini sequel that had never gotten produced. So that exists. It's a special feature on the Blu-ray.
Interesting.
It's like the whole special is like an hour long.
hmm
And George Pell actually wrote a sequel novel called The Time Machine 2.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
There was
And have you
another.
read that?
I've never read it.
No. Okay.
There's a great. I did read a great annotated edition of The Time Machine, which is really, really, really interesting. If you
Hmm.
can go out and find it at your local library.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't go to your library right
Mm,
now.
you cannot.
You
Don't leave your
can
house.
maybe order it online though. But
If
okay,
it
so
ships.
there's that
There,
movie, and then we can get and talk about the other one, that sort of is a remake reboot
Right.
of
well,
the original, done
there's
by him.
one time after time.
Which is kind of a bastardization, really.
Yeah,
It's about H.G. Wells, the character, the
right.
person who is the time traveler who has to follow Jack the Ripper to 1970. I forget what year it is, 77, whatever,
Nine. Yeah.
79.
Right.
Um, um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that doesn't quite count.
it's
It's
we
not
No,
yeah,
like
it's just
it's not like this one, and then the one that was, what year did that come out in the Simon Wells version of the Time Machine?
it was the DreamWorks one was released in 2001, I think.
okay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
our own Tom Curley,
Yeah,
worked on the film.
it was my first foray into big budget filmmaking. I was a set PA on that movie. Um, in February of 2000,
hmm
and or no, Actually, I think we shot it in February of 2001, and it came out the next year or the year after that.
Well, okay, but back
Because
in the
either way,
day,
I moved to LA at the end of that year, so it was
right?
2001. Um,
It came out in
and
2000. It was released in 2002.
there we go.
There you go.
So I got hired as a set PA partially because I was in a local group in Albany called the Upstate Independents, which is a film enthusiast group. It might still be around. I hope it is. But through my connections through that, we all found out that the Time Machine was going to be shooting their exteriors in Albany, New York, which still looks like 1890s New York City in parts. And so a bunch of us got hired. There was like 20 something set PAs, and a whole bunch of local Albany people got hired as extras. And
Right.
I met my mentor there. I was a sound mixer named David McMillan, and got to work closely around the DP that shot The Predator and Moulin Rouge and a bunch of other
Nice.
cool stuff. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm a big. I know this isn't highly rated. The film it's got some hit some. I love this version of the Time Machine. I really do.
Yeah, it's
I've never seen this version of the Time Machine.
Guy Pearce is the star.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I know of it. I've watched the trailer, and it looked to me from the trailer that it falters similar to the first one.
They've definitely got a better plot line, I think, going
Right.
on throughout. Like it's more cohesive. It's more character driven. Like it makes sense with the characters, and like the
Right.
motivations are better, and
They definitely have fallen in the same trap that the first one does as far as addressing the evolution. The Eloi are not really any different than humans. The
right.
Morlocks are. They've gone underground, but they're just more primitive. That's basically it. Orlando, they have a nice Orlando Jones has got a odd. They add Orlando Jones as a minor character, but he's plays a hologram
Hmm.
from the future,
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he ends up.
7 Up guy.
Yeah, yeah, and he ends up far into the future as well. So he comes up later on. So I thought it was nice. I love the score. Was done by Klaus Badelt, who did Pirates of the Caribbean. I love the score for that film. I love the much like the first Time Machine, the 1960 version. The strongest part of the film is the beginning, is the 1800s portion of it, which is what you worked on, Tom.
Yeah,
I think that was the strongest part of the film. But
his
they dealt with time travel. They actually dealt with trying to, because he tries to go
yeah,
back and stop his fiance from getting killed,
right.
and he's unsuccessful. So he was trying to figure out how he can do it. So he travels far into the future to see if that question's been answered.
Yeah,
So
I,
there's a
I feel
there,
like that works a lot better story
yeah,
wise.
and even so, I think the first act of the
Well, it's
2000,
certainly more cinematic,
yeah,
for
oh,
sure.
100%. And it works at its own, almost as its own short film. I think the beginning. And I think time travel stories around that time period are just more effective anyways, because they treat it with more of a mystery and a more it's maybe because it's less jaded, and it's back then there was so little time travel written,
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I feel like it's always done better when it takes place then. I don't know, but I love that film actually.
So the other thing they have going for it is like modern CGI and stuff like
Right.
that. But I do feel like the monsters were still the Morlocks were not as good as I had hoped they would have been.
No, I agree, and they added Jeremy
Um,
Irons as like an Uber Morlock, like the leader,
right.
which there
That
isn't
was
one.
an interesting idea.
Yeah, they needed a villain, I suppose.
Yeah.
It was Simon Wells directed, who was the great grandson of H.G. Wells, and he was
Right.
an animator by trade. He'd worked with Don Bluth and a bunch of other big
Yeah.
animators.
He directed Prince of Egypt
Yep,
and I think one of the Fievel movies
yep.
and a couple
Mostly a
other.
storyboard artist. He does a lot of storyboarding. And he was a storyboard artist on Back to the Future 3 as well.
Yeah.
Um, so how was he? How much did you? How did you see him as? This was his first
I
feature,
I I
right?
don't think I ever got more than like closer than 20 feet away from
You
him
know?
ever, except I might have handed him coffee once, but
Yeah.
it's not like we hung out or I
No.
got to
Well, no.
really get in there
I
close.
mean, this is a pretty big budget film to to jump into your, for a live action debut. It was a pretty,
Oh
uh,
yeah, he had a lot on his
big,
shoulders,
yeah.
and it's rumored that came to a crescendo and he didn't finish the movie. I I was
Really?
not there for any of
Right.
that part, but yeah,
Yeah, they apparently brought in Gore for Binsky, right? Isn't that who they brought in?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what I was
I
told.
thought I saw him credited with it. That's so that they did bring in another director at the end.
Interesting.
Um, uh, but I mean, box office wise, I don't believe it. This one didn't do that
No,
great,
it
did
was
it?
underwhelming. Again, I think that had a lot to do with I mean, it made a profit, but not a ton. It was like 80 million. It made like 120 something. So, you know, it wasn't a huge disappointment, but I don't think they were. I think they were expecting a blockbuster out of it. But how do you expect a blockbuster of a first time director? First time live action director.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think it was also released in the middle of the summer amongst a whole bunch of other things too,
Right.
and you know,
But I like it. I'm a big fan of it.
yeah,
That's me.
turned out
Well,
What's interesting?
I haven't seen it, so I'm.
They
But
they address they one thing that
it
they do
sounds better
address.
than the original.
I think it is. They do address the idea that time can't be changed, which is
yeah,
uh which
deterministic.
is um
Oh,
a
determined.
lot of people. What's that? Yeah, yeah. The Stephen King actually did it. Finished listening to 11/22/63, which is about
Oh yeah,
a guy who goes back and they made a Hulu series with James
yeah,
Franco.
it was really good.
Yeah, and it has basically Stephen King took the idea of that something will stop you from happening, much like physics won't allow you to walk through a wall.
Right.
Something will prevent from changing history, and he Stephen Kinged it. Basically, he very much took a Stephen King spin on it. But that the 2002 version of Time Machine addresses that, which I thought which was just nice.
Yeah, we yeah, I remember we shot multiple different death scenes for his girlfriend, and that was the first time I had ever seen a spinning crane shot get filmed. Which
Oh yeah,
he does the drop to his knees and like,
right.
you know, so, so seeing stuff like that really like molded my desire to go into this career.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, that is a pretty. It was a pretty big budget movie. I
Yeah.
remember it got pushed really
Well,
hard
they
when it
had
came out.
okay, so for there's a scene, there's a big ice skating scene. It's like the first time that she gets killed. They had four of these lights, which are called Musco lights, which come on a big six-axle truck, and it's like a big like football stadium light that goes up on an arm like that. And there were four of them that existed on the East Coast, and they had a Spider-Man was using two of them, and they had to wait for Spider-Man to stop using them so that they could come up and shoot our scene in Albany.
wow.
So for that one
Weird.
night, we had all the Musco lights on the East Coast for this one scene.
And we
And
lit up the entire East
dude, it's
Hey,
insane. Like they had them like maybe 500 yards away in all directions, and it
right.
just gives this like complete blanket of light everywhere you go. It's kind of amazing. Um,
That is wild.
And that's the
yeah.
only is that the only lights they use then?
Oh no. I mean
Oh,
the
okay,
when they get in close and stuff, they'll bring
right.
in other movie lights and such. But that's what they use to light the huge sets. Like when
Yeah.
they're when you can see like a football field size area.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
So there's that movie too.
Right.
Look at that.
Here's the thing. I've read the Time Machine a few times. It doesn't, as it exists as a book, it's not filmable.
Right.
It would not translate verbatim it just would not work. So I understand why they made the changes they made in both versions. It
Hmm.
doesn't make it any better though. Like it doesn't. I would not just don't make it.
Right. There
Really,
are some things that have been proven to be really difficult to film. And I mean, time travel, and we can certainly get into this more as we get into other movies that deal with time travel in way more philosophical or scientific ways. And kind
Yeah.
of give
There's
a
all
little more
kinds of
comment. You got to give
wacky
more that give more
approaches to it.
commentary
right.
on the idea itself, as opposed to than these two movies really did. They didn't really get into like the effects of time travel
Right.
so much.
Or, or
Uh,
or the or the other ideas that like traveling back in time can change the future, like
Right.
the Ray Bradbury story with the Tyrannosaurus Rex and
The Sound of Thunder.
yeah,
Yeah,
um,
the butterfly effect.
exactly,
Yeah.
Yeah,
or the Butterfly Effect, the movie.
right, right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Another time travel movie. They did remake. They made Sound of Thunder into a film, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
We won't cover that one because it wasn't very good. I'll put that out there right now. I don't. I'm gonna say right now we will not cover
Shoot
that
that
film.
one down. Yeah, we won't even talk about that one. But yeah, I mean, obviously, and these things are done to like greater or lesser effect, and sometimes it time travel, even when it's not done perfectly, is used incredibly effectively.
Right.
However, sometimes it just gets it really just blows huge holes through plot
Well, I mean,
lines and
when
films and
oh,
like
100%.
can sink them to some degree,
Even
with
in
the
Back to the
level of
Future,
stupidity.
Back to the Future, which is I have an unhealthy obsession with. Um, Within Back to the Future, they contradict their own time travel theory. In the beginning of the film, Doc demonstrates the DeLorean to Marty by sending Einstein 1 minute into the future, and in that minute, he's gone, he's missing, you don't see him, and he reappears a minute later. Whereas at the end of Back to the Future, the end of the film, Doc says you've got to come back with me to the future because of your kids. So it's got to be done about your kids. And Marty's like, "Oh, do we become assholes or something?" So then they get to the future and they're there. Like they should have been missing for the last 30 years. There's no reason that Marty and Jennifer should be in the future when they get there because they just left and never came back. Like it's so they're conflicting time theories.
Right.
They should have been missing for 30 years. They should have gotten there and be like, "Hey, where the hell have you been for 30 years?"
well, he brought him
So
back though, didn't he?
yes, well, that's some people say
So,
that
so
proves that
that's
he
kind of
they were
like the
big,
Bill and Ted thing where they're like, trash can. Remember the
which is
trash can.
Trash can. Yeah.
which was prelude to that,
So
which is
future
probably
us has to go get the trash can.
which is one of the probably the laziest. I love the shit out of Bill and Ted, but it's probably
Yeah.
the laziest time travel plot device in all of film.
Of
Is that
course.
we'll have to come do it later? Oh, look, it happened.
Yeah.
Well, hot tub
I guess
time
we did it
machine.
then.
I mean,
Well,
hot tub time machine is totally ridiculous.
it is.
But, Crispin Glover's in that one too, and he
Yeah,
is
it
fucking
is.
great. He steals that entire movie. Every scene he's in, you're just like, what the fuck?
When we saw him, I think he mentioned that film when we saw him. We met him and we did when we interviewed him, and he mentioned I think he mentioned it as one of the films he did just so he could finance his own film.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, his little series
Yeah,
of
he makes a lot of
his
weirdo films.
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Those films
very, very
they're
strange
out there.
stuff. And he has strange poetry books. And if I do highly recommend though, if you can ever see Crispin Glover, if he comes to your town and he does a present where he will usually do a performance reading of one of his poetry books, which is highly entertaining in itself. Then he will
Yeah,
screen one of his movies and then he will do a Q&A afterwards. And
it is an
it is worth the
entertaining
4
evening. Yeah.
hours you were going to spend in the theater that night. And then he'll sign stuff afterwards. He's actually a pretty nice guy. But yeah, holy cow, is he an interesting human being?
He was our very first interview for Film Dumpster.
Was he?
Yeah, he
Did he?
helped get our everything. The reason this very podcast exists right now is because of Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
Did he try
Yeah.
and kick you in the head?
Yeah, just me and Letterman.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about, Nick?
Yeah.
He was on
Absolutely.
Letterman
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. Yep. And he kind of flipped out, and
Yeah.
it's always been a strange one.
Yeah, but that might he
But
might have
entertaining.
had like a little too much cocaine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Could cocaine? Too much cocaine, not enough medication.
Yeah. Or
Yeah. So
yeah.
something like that. I don't know. Anyhow.
So
Well,
Anyway,
yeah.
if you're a
We.
time travel purist and you really want to cover your bases, watch The Time Machine.
Yeah.
You could probably skip it though.
yeah.
I know. That's what I was gonna say. Like, I felt like if we're gonna go down this rabbit hole, we're gonna start talking about time travel and cinema. I have to watch the original, and that's
Right.
probably where we should start. And
Yeah, I mean it's
yeah.
the baseline. It's the
Right.
thing to
So
measure the
yeah,
rest of them from, and pretty much most of them are better.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say. I turned on
Uh,
12 Monkeys the other night. We'll get into that at some point, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
that's
there's
one
a
of my
lot of
favorites.
great time travel movies out there, like ones that hold up really well, and
But
probably some
I
others that
think we're
don't.
gonna do well. Let's put a poll out to the viewers and the listeners. What time travel franchise do you want us to see talk about next?
Yes.
So what?
Do you want to
Well, I
wanna
think
move
we're
on to?
Netflix,
going.
Back to the
I think we're
Future,
going with
Terminator.
the top earners right
Right.
now. So it'll be between the Terminator franchise, Back to the Future, and maybe one more.
Yeah,
What do
what
you
is
think?
another bigger or like franchisee, time travel-y?
Well, let's go.
Or
I
could
don't want
we
to.
throw in another really popular just time travel movie?
We can do. Well, we'll go 12 Monkeys. It's in the top 10, and we already mentioned it. So let's say 12 Monkeys.
Okay,
All right.
12 Monkeys. All right,
So
so
yeah, pick any of those three. We'll put a poll up on ScreenRadar.com, and we're gonna do a whole bunch of these, maybe once a month or whatever, whenever we
Yeah.
get around to it.
yeah,
And
I mean, at this point, since we're all stuck in our houses for the foreseeable future and the entire world is about to change, we might be able to do these more often. But
yeah,
we'll do it again soon.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Doses.
yeah. Well,
You got
before
anything
we
else to say?
before we
Well,
go, what are you thinking, Helly?
I was going to tell us where to follow us.
Oh, yeah.
ScreenRadar.com. Facebook is ScreenRadar. Twitter is ScreenRadar. Instagram is ScreenRadar. Although we're not very active there any longer.
At Screen Radar, you mean?
ScreenRadar. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get that.
Hopefully,
We'll get back going.
The Film Dorks will be on iTunes shortly. I hope.
Yep, we're working on that.
Yeah, we're still waiting on that, but you can find the podcast on Screen Radar and
Right
Podbean. You
Yeah.
can find
And
it on
Podbean,
Podbean
too,
as
yeah.
well. So, and yeah. And
Love
keep
to know what
checking
your
out our
thoughts
stuff.
are and
Yeah.
where we can improve or what you like or what you don't like, and let us know.
Yeah.
Trying to do this better.
You're an ass.
I'm not really
All right.
frozen.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Later.